Welcome to Inside the City with YBC Muskogee. I'm Adriana here with
Emily.
Isaiah.
I would like to welcome our guest today, Muskogee City Manager
Kendall Francis.
What is one issue facing Muskogee that you wish more teenagers understood or got more involved in?
And you can start me off with a hard question every time. Let's see. One issue, there's probably several issues if I really think about it, because I believe that we need more input from youth voices. One issue, we could talk about like activities that are youth centric, that are geared towards the youth here in Muskogee. There's a lot of focus on our parks and recreation and ways to improve that. One of my goals is to make improvements to the Hatbox Sports Complex, the baseball and softball fields, and I want to rejuvenate sports tourism, which is having more tournaments and which brings people from out of town to play in the tournaments and then drives it's an economic boost for the city. But I think sometimes having that youth perspective on some of these issues brings a different view. I think we need more of that. We've talked in some of our other podcasts about a youth council and things like that. I really think that that's a direction we need to look at moving. We can continue to have those discussions. Maybe that's a project the YBC can spearhead and see if we can't get that started. I think that would be a great first step, and then you'll have input in a lot of the decisions and a lot of the issues that take place here in Muskogee.
There were several airport projects on tonight's agenda. How do you decide that improving the airport should be a priority over other projects in the city?
It's not necessarily that that's a priority over other projects. It's a priority alongside other projects because the airport is an enterprise fund. It funds itself. So we're not taking tax monies from other projects to do the airport projects that we're talking about, which is building some additional hangars and improving the runways. In fact, a lot of it is federal grant monies that help support these projects, and we pay for the projects a lot with federal grant monies. But the airport absolutely is a priority of mine and my staff because, again, it's kind of an untapped resource, and I think people would be surprised how much activity happens out at Davis Field. I'm privy to, like, my airport manager will send me emails or text messages with pictures of all kinds of cool jets or things that fly in there, and sometimes it's famous people, Carrie Underwood, or maybe it's a big time football coach here to scout one of our players at Muskogee High or Hilldale. I know a lot more about the activity that happens out there, but there's a lot of economic potential that an airport can bring to a community. So to be able to prioritize making sure that the runways are kept up to quality. One of the features of our airport is the main runway is like over 7,000 feet long, which allows us to land nearly any type of plane that exists. Not something that every community has. We have advantages that some airports don't have. We also have a lot of vacant land around there that is owned by the airport that could be used for development for projects. Oklahoma is a big supporter of aviation type projects, and a lot of those types of aeronautic projects are coming to Oklahoma. We're hoping to capitalize on some of those types of things, but plus just the rentals from those hangars. We have a lot of people that own their own planes and need places to store them, so we get revenues from hangar rentals. So it's a priority unto itself, and it's not necessarily competing against other priorities within the city.
What is the hardest part about saying no to a project that people really want?
It's human nature to try to please everybody. And so I think sometimes when you have to say no, feel like maybe you've let someone down. Sometimes we say no to projects we need. A lot of times it's simply because funding doesn't exist for those projects. Probably more of those decisions that I have to make on a weekly basis than I really care to admit. When you're working on a very confined budget, you have to make hard choices.
So many of these projects, like what you're talking about, depend on grants. How does the city decide which grants are worth applying for, and what happens if a grant isn't awarded?
That's a good question. We evaluate a lot of grants across all departments. Really, every grant requires that the city puts in what they call a local match. If it's $1 million grant, we might be required to put in 10% of that, which would be $100,000. And sometimes $100,000, we don't just have that excess type of cash laying around to put monies aside for the possibilities of grants. Again, then it's the priorities of the projects, because there are lots of grants available. Sometimes we qualify, sometimes we don't. But I never want to get into the position where we've started down the road to start a project and then the grant fails, like if we don't get the grant and then we have to stop the project because the funding doesn't exist. So we always make sure that we have secured those grants before we start those projects. But sometimes it just means that a project doesn't happen. And I'll give you a good example. We really recently built Grandview Park right out by Hilldale School, and the park was built, but when it was completed, then there was a lot of questions that we thought that we were going to provide bathrooms, and we also it was the understanding that the parking lot was going to be repaved. And I think originally that was the idea behind it, but the projects cost more than they thought, and just building the park cost more, and the funding just wasn't there. So fortunately, over the last year, we've been able to just complete a project to add bathrooms at the park, and those should now be open. They just finished within the last couple of weeks, and we're looking at a project to improve part of the parking lot that exists there. It won't be all of it, but we'll make some improvements, and sometimes that's how it has to happen. We start a project and we do as much as we possibly can with the funding that's available, and then we add to the project as monies become available.
I actually have an add-on for that. So the city deciding on grants. Who actually applies for the grants in the city? Like, who does that job? Is it you or the mayor?
Okay, so that's actually several people, but we do have a contract with Neighbors Building Neighborhoods, which is a nonprofit here in town that assists us with grant writing and grant administration.
Oh, really?
And so they do a lot of that, or assist my staff a lot with that, but they don't do it alone. My staff has to provide a lot of the information and a lot of the groundwork that is needed for the information to write those grants. They're just experts in how to put those grants together and the correct story, because grant writing is about storytelling. It's about telling your story, and that's what helps make your grant competitive. And they know the other little nuances to grant writing that help make your grant more competitive. So it really is a team effort, but we do, like I said, we do contract with them to assist us. And then once you receive a grant administration is equally important, because that means there's a lot of follow-up reporting that has to take place. When you get monies from anywhere, whether it's a foundation or the government, they require a lot of follow-up reporting to make sure that you spent the money the way the money was intended and the way that you told them that you would in your grant application. So it can be a lot of work.
If a resident wants to pay for a water filter that attaches at the meter, does the city have a way to install it?
Repeat that again.
If a resident wants to pay for a water filter that attaches at the meter, does the city have a way to install it?
I'm going to say no, because you probably would not put a water filter at your meter. That would probably be in-house, inside your house. It wouldn't necessarily be practical to put it outside in the meter pit. For several reasons. Some of it is just that they're not really built to be outdoors in inclement weather, cold, freezing, things like that. So that wouldn't be something the city would do. And if someone wanted to do that, we would discourage them, because that we would tell you that would be best suited to be inside your house.
That was a good citizen question.
Yeah.
Okay. What investment is being made to help young adults stay or come back to Muskogee after graduating and enter into the workforce? What does Muskogee have to offer?
Muskogee's got a lot of great things to offer. But the investments that we're making, um, well, some of it is in job creation. We work very hard to attract both industrial jobs, retail, recruiting, those types of things. The city contracts with Port Muskogee to help recruit industrial jobs. And so things like the new data centers that are being built, um, uh, uh, manufacturers like Dow Tile and Georgia Pacific, we work very hard to help those, help recruit those, but also to help those companies um, uh, be retained here and expand to create more jobs. So some of our, not some of our focus, a lot of our focus is on that part, creating opportunities, reasons for the youth to stay here or come back to Muskogee. A lot of it's quality of life, things we talked about, parks and recreation, things that attract young families to want to be here, opportunity, um, new housing, things like that, stuff that housing that families can afford, but that are attractive to young families who are just starting out or who've moved away and want to come back home. We do a lot to encourage that. We work a lot with our educational partners, like ICTC and Connor State, on um, workforce workforce education, things like that, trainings. So when these opportunities do come up for jobs, young people have the training that's necessary, or it's available here locally that they can be trained to take these jobs that are available. So that's very important. We also work with our tribal partners, both the Creek Nation and so the Muskogee Creek Nation and the Cherokee Nation, because Muskogee shares, we are in both nations physically. So we work a lot with our tribal partners who want to invest back into um, their population for workforce, job creation, training, things like that. So,
Yeah.
Okay. So more on that, we are just talking about what does make Muskogee a place where people want to stay. But this is what kind of projects can we add to Muskogee to make it a place where people, young people specifically, would want to stay after graduation.
Okay.
What more can we do for it?
Well, I don't know. I maybe should be asking you that question. What, from a young person's perspective, what would make you want to stay? If you went away to school, and what would make you want to bring that education back here? Um, what is it that we're missing? I said we have a lot of great things, and I believe that we do, um, but it may not be my perspective that really counts. And again, that's where I think those youth voices are important. We need to be asking the right people. You can ask me what we need. I may not be the right person to ask. The question should be turned around to you guys. What is it that you guys would like to see that would make you want to stay, or that's going to help attract, maybe maybe you have older brothers or sisters or other family members that have left Muskogee. What's going to attract them to come back? Um, and those are the conversations we need to be having. And I would be happy to venture some guesses, but I don't know that I'm really the right person to ask that. I can help, once we have those ideas,
Yeah.
I can help facilitate them. But too many times I think people in my position um, are expected to have all the answers, and we really don't. And I rely a lot on my team to give me good advice, to give me insight on things that I don't fully understand. But that's where we need to be having those broader conversations community wide. What is it that I think we have a lot of things here in Muskogee that set us apart from other communities, and it was I was attracted to move here, and I love it here. But from a youth perspective, what are some of those things? Can you think of some things off the top of your head that what's one thing
Yeah.
you would think of that you'd like to see that maybe would help you want to stay here?
So one thing I already do love about Muskogee is I feel like it's a very community oriented place.
Okay.
And I feel like a lot of people in Muskogee really like that, especially our youth. So I think we just need to just do more things that bring each other together. Like I had this idea, I talked to Leslie about it, like where we put little letter boxes around towns and you put letters in it for other people. Like they could go to a fire station or a police station and it's just encouragement notes. I feel like just doing more together as a community to bring each other together. I feel like a lot of people would really like that.
I like that. That's see, you have a heart for people. I can tell. So you want
That's
to bring
rhyming my VC.
yeah, you want to bring the community together. I like that. So,
Thank you. You got a question?
Oh, tell us how the Broadway District project came about.
I'm not 100% sure that I know the actual answer to that. I know that there was a core group of people that felt that the way to see Muskogee grow and um, bring some life to down was to bring life to downtown. And I've personally seen that in other communities, that some of these successful communities started focusing their efforts on their downtowns. Maybe they rehabilitated their downtowns, and when they started making investment there, public investment, then private investors started falling in. They wanted to be a part of that momentum, and it grew from there. And I think there was this core group of individuals, and I'm not comfortable saying their names because I only know a couple of them, and I wouldn't want to leave somebody out. But I think a lot of it started with Main Street Muskogee, which is an organization here in town that's focused on growth and maintaining our downtown and revitalizing it. So some of those members, I think, were some of the key drivers behind that, and that had the idea. And then they started collaborating with other community partners on how could we bring that to a reality. And of course, it takes funding, and it takes a lot of money to do those types of projects. And the City of Muskogee Foundation was very generous to put several $1,000,000 towards the project. And then the city, part of our capital improvement sales tax, we dedicated, I believe, $2.5 million to go towards that project to start revitalizing the Broadway from about Main Street to Fifth Street, and some of those alleys and corridors around there, and new sidewalks, improved streets, lighting, some outdoor meeting space and things like that. The idea is that some of that public investment is going to start creating private investment. People they're going to see the energy downtown. They're going to want to maybe open a business downtown or relocate their business down there, and eventually I'd like to see some downtown housing, like loft apartments, things like that. I think that that's an area that could be improved downtown, and when you start having people living downtown, and then that obviously brings more people downtown, but more incentive for people to open business, things like that. So,
How does the city decide where to put towards? How does the city decide where to put towards?
so like what projects we decide to invest in?
Yeah.
And that kind of depends on a lot of factors. So let's use the Broadway district as an example. So that was part of a large capital improvement plan that was put together. Um, they put together a citizens committee, a very large committee of about 40 people, to try to come up with ideas. You know, if we passed this sales tax, and we knew we had, about $30 million over the course of the next, 5 to 8 years to spend, what would those priorities look like? And that committee helped bring some of those ideas forward about what, you know if we had that money available, what could we spend it on? And then those ideas were brought to the city council, who ultimately had to vote on what the plan looked like. And I remember that actually happened right before I started my job here in 2025. That vote was just a meeting or two before I started. And I remember it was a pretty long meeting because I was watching it online, and a lot of citizen input, and a lot of back and forth, you know, priorities. And some people had to, there were some great ideas that got said no to because, there just wasn't enough funding, or the majority felt that it wasn't high enough on the priority list. And so, in that instance, for the CIP plan, there ended up being 11 projects that were identified and finalized by the city council. Uh, Other projects, it's sometimes not that much public input. Maybe it's more at a staff level that helps, make recommendations on priorities. And one thing that we are doing right now in the city is we're starting a strategic planning process where we're going to. Um, it's basically an operational strategic plan, but it's going to be the department's prioritizing, their work over the next 3 to 5 years to help, meet our core objectives. So, depending on what the project is, it will determine on on the procedure we use to set those priorities.
Okay. Looking ahead 5 to 10 years, what changes do you hope today's teens will notice because of the decisions being made now?
That there will be more opportunity available. That that it won't be. It'll be an easy choice to want to come back to Muskogee or to stay in Muskogee. That the opportunities for jobs, for housing, for um, different quality of life make Muskogee instantly attractive to the people that grew up here, and they're going to be telling their friends about it. And it's going to want to encourage people to relocate here to Muskogee, and I think we're headed in that right direction. Um, but there's a lot of work to be done,
Yeah.
honestly. But I'm very confident that actually would be the case in the next 7 to 10 years.
Thank you. Okay, so how do we decide which projects should use local tax dollars and which projects should be funded with grants or partnerships?
Well, I'll be honest, we try to use as much grants and partnerships as we possibly can. If, again, grants aren't a given just because you apply, they're very competitive. And honestly, now that we're past COVID quite a ways, the grants are not as prevalent anymore. During COVID, there was a lot more federal monies floating around to help stimulate the economy and things like that. So there was a lot of grants, and they were easy to get. Now that's not the truth now. A lot more restrictions, they're a lot more competitive. And so, um, it's not a given to get a grant, but we always look at ways that we can collaborate, either with public-private partnerships, things like that. Um, I always say that you'll survive together, you'll die alone. Um, the city's not, and shouldn't be, the answer to everybody's problems. And it really needs to be a collaborative mindset, whether that's the city and the county working together, or the city and the federal government, the state, private partners, whatever. We look at all of those opportunities when they're available. And then the last course is, the city will spend spend its own money um, when we need to and when we're able to. But the priorities, personally, my priorities are always to try to collaborate and come up with innovative and unique partnerships to help fund different projects because everybody benefits from those types of from those types of projects.
Thank you.
As downtown continues to grow, how does the city balance making it safe and welcoming for everyone while also helping people who are experiencing homelessness?
That's a tough question. Um,
Can we do that one more time?
Sure.
Isaiah, will you speak? Will you sit up straight, please?
yeah, Isaiah.
Thank you.
As downtown continues to grow, how does the city balance making it safe and welcoming for everyone while also helping people who are experiencing homelessness?
Okay, so um, it's a delicate question. Are you asking, um, or are you saying that maybe people don't feel safe if if maybe the green spaces are we have homeless people sitting around or like in the parks right now, sometimes
Yes.
that attracts some of the homeless population, um, and so that is a very delicate situation that it is tough to balance. And as we put money invest in downtown, that conversation has come up, internally with our staff, um, that that might there might be more attraction to the homeless population to hang out in those areas and stuff like that. So we do have some laws that we've put in place, ordinances as far
Mhm.
as camping, overnight stays, um, the parks. There's a time limit. You have to be out of the parks overnight, and that's patrolled by the police department to enforce that. But we've had complaints, and I'll take Spalding Park as the primary example. It's very popular right now with pickleball and tennis, and if you go by there at night, it's very busy. Um, but it's also a little dark, and sometimes we have some homeless population that are hanging out there, and people have expressed that they don't feel safe. So we do put a lot of effort towards um, physical things that can improve safety, like lighting. Pretty soon, you're going to see a pretty substantial lighting project at Spalding, where that is in the process of putting in new street lights and things like that. So that's going to help people feel safer. We the the parks are patrolled as much as the police department can, when manpower allows. And so that, but there, like I said, there are some legislative type of things that we've passed at the city council level to discourage um, people from hanging out in those areas. Uh, but at the same time, they're public areas, and so we can't discriminate. That just based on the fact that they may or may not be, you know, you know, that they may or may not be homeless, and so it's a fine balance, but um, it's an ongoing process. I mean, that's a good question, and that's something we wrestle with a lot within our departments, um, and of course, then we also on the other side about what can we do to partner with our community partners to help address homelessness, and there's work that's taking place all the time on trying to come up with those solutions, and that's a collaborative thing because it's not just the city, it's not just mental health providers or the gospel rescue mission. It's all of us working together to help come up with workable solutions. So difficult issue, very difficult issue.
There's a second part to that question, I believe, but you may have answered most of it. I know the person that I talked to about this question was referring to a incident that happened at the farmer's market one day. And it was a homeless man had some food stamps and he got his food and it was great. And then he just kind of flipped the switch and was just running around with a knife in the air, which scared some of the people.
Of course it would.
And I think that was why it scared him, but they also knew that he really just needs help.
Yes.
So I think that was kind of the root of this question, was to see how can we help them while keeping everybody safe, knowing that sometimes, they're not bad people, they just need help.
Yes.
So that's kind of where that question came from, to kind of give you an idea.
Well, and I'll be honest, it is a question, or a very similar question to things we deal with on a very regular basis. And it's not an easy answer because there aren't easy answers. Some people simply refuse the help, even if it is provided. But there are some avenues, within our community, some resources that we can help people with to either temporary housing, whether it's a mental health issue, things like that. Those resources exist. People have to want to take them, but then there's other resources like the Gospel Rescue Mission that serves a very large population on a daily basis, but that it also has its rules and its structure that they just, if you aren't willing to help yourself and follow the rules, then you can't be a part of that, or they're not going to serve you. And it's not comforting to know that Muskogee is not the only city that deals with this. I mean, this is in the news pretty frequently, all around our area, and having a heart for people makes it hard, because I hate to see people struggle. I hate to see people that are in those situations, but at the same time, safety of everybody is important. And so, like the situation you described, that's just not acceptable. And I would hope that the police were called, and the situation was addressed in that manner, which it needed to be. And then once they're in the court system, there's maybe some court mandated help that could help get them on the right path. But I just wish I could say that we just wave the magic wand, but it's very difficult. And like I said, we spend a lot of time having those conversations because it affects a lot of things within the city that you probably don't even realize.
Okay. What advice would you give a teenager who wants to become a city manager, council member, or other public servant someday?
Well, I tell you, if you were going to be a city manager, you may have lost your mind. That may be what I tell you. But so when people ask me when I became a city manager, I tell them it was a temporary insanity that made me wanted to do it. But honestly, it's very rewarding. It's very hard, but it's very rewarding. What I would tell you is, I would encourage people to give to public service. I think, it's been a great career for me, over 30 years in city government. I started as a water treatment plant operator and worked my way up through the ranks, and it was always about kind of I always say it's about finding your why. Why do you do what you do?
Mhm.
It's not a paycheck. A paycheck is a product of what you do. It's not why you do it. I do what I do because I truly get to make a positive impact on people's lives every day. And it was the same thing when I was a water treatment plant operator. I was directly affecting the health of people on a daily basis, probably more than a doctor does in their lifetime. I had, you know, when you're providing safe drinking water to thousands of people every day, that's how I always looked at it. That was my why. That's what I did. Why I did is because I was helping people and impacting lives positively. And I think that applies that for a council member position, for a city manager, or just any public service position. I speak to all our new employees at orientation, and I always tell a story about um, President John F. Kennedy. So when he was president, their mission was to um, put a man on the moon, and he was visiting NASA, and um, he saw a janitor sweeping the floor, and he asked the janitor, said, "What do you do for NASA?" He says, "I'm helping put a man on the moon." It wasn't that I was sweeping the floors or taking out trash or cleaning bathrooms. It's because he realized what his role was to that greater mission. That he knew that if he was focused on keeping the facility clean, the trash picked up, the floor swept, then that freed up engineers and astronauts and others to focus on the greater mission of putting a man on the moon. But he understood how his role fit into that greater role. And I think all of those things, regardless of what level of public service, it all fits into that greater mission of, the the city's mission statement is it's a privilege to make our neighbors' lives better every day. And regardless of what we do for the city, whether it's a voluntary role, whether it's a paid role, um, if we're looking at it, everything that I do is to um, make the lives of our neighbors better every day, then I think we've done something great.
Okay. So this question actually has a little bit to do with that. But are there any boards, committees, or advisory groups where young people could serve or provide input other than just YVC? How can youth get more involved in our city?
So I don't think that well, I think you're required to be 18. So those that are younger than that, where's Piper? She's our 18-year-old. Oh,
I'm almost 18.
oh shoot! Should I not have said that? Do we need to back that up?
We'll take that off, yeah.
I'm sorry.
She's had some problems that she's working through.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm almost 18, so I
Yeah.
can help you.
So let me back up here. Um, so the boards that I'm aware of require that they're at least 18 to be able to serve on them, and so that's where again I come back to that youth council. Maybe that's another. We need to create more avenues for teens to be able to feel comfortable being involved and giving them avenues to do that. And um, so we need to get to work on that. I'm guessing, but
Yes.
YVC is a great tool for you guys. It's a great avenue for you guys to be involved in. Obviously, you are, and to your question earlier, those thousands upon thousands of volunteer hours, you are making the lives of our neighbors better every day with the work that you guys do, and. I hope you don't feel unappreciated for it because I think it's phenomenal, the work that you guys do. But I think we just need to get serious about putting something together about, that is youth centric and help give you a voice. I think we need to do that. We need to be serious about that.
I think that's our biggest takeaway from today is we need to make that happen.
I would agree.
Thank you.
Sometimes at events outdoors at the Civic Center, there are situations that can make people feel uncomfortable or unsafe.
Actually, we can probably stop because I think we answered that earlier.
That was the one that you
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about. Yep.
That's what we were talking about, sorry. Here, he's giving you another question.
When the city receives several bids for a project, what factors do you consider besides choosing the lowest price?
Well, in some situations, choosing lowest price is the requirement, depending on where the monies originate from. So a lot of these grants that we talk about, some of those, that is the requirement, that we have to take the lowest bid. And sometimes, obviously that's good. We don't want to spend as much money, but sometimes the lowest bid is not the best bid. And um, so depending on where the funding comes from, depends on what leeways we have with bids that we can take. There are other qualifications for bidders that, they have, depending on the types of projects, they have to go through pre-qualifications to say that they have, whether it's some of the qualifications are as much, it can be that they have the financial resources or the manpower resources to complete the projects, that they have a good history of project completion and doing quality work. And so have been some times where we have rejected bids based on, um, um, because the bidders that was the low bidder, we weren't comfortable recommending them because of what maybe past experience. Um, so there are some. It's not a real clean cut answer, but obviously because we're using public monies, we try to go with the lowest bid, and that's why we try to do as much work as we can prior to awarding the bids to ensure that it's done. The bidding is done equitably, but that only appropriately qualified bidders actually place bids.
We would like to thank Mr. Francis for joining us again today and always being such a great advocate for the youth of Muskogee. Remember, stay involved, stay connected, and keep using your voice.